Hills Like White Elephants, Elements of Literature, Part 2. Returning to the symbolism of the characters themselves, their symbolic titles. Again, the male character has no name. In giving him the absence of an inferred persona, perhaps it allows him to take on the persona of the author. Hemingway at this time was a very famous person. He was a celebrity. He was known as a womanizer, a very romantic character who lived in Spain and lived the European lifestyle. So you can see how this unnamed American might in 1929 take on the persona of a young Hemingway himself. And again, Jig, there's terms of endearment in that name, giving the lover, the American, is an older person. Perhaps he named her this, perhaps her father named her this. She's a follower, she follows the dance of life, and she's at this moment of conflict where the dance is done. As they might say, the jig is up. Excessive alcohol use is a theme. This couple has been partying throughout Spain. The drink that they have at the railroad station is anís del toro. Anise is an herb, and it's used to make medicine. I looked this up on web.com, Web Doctor. Women use this herb to increase milk flow when nursing, start menstruation, treat menstrual discomfort or pain, ease childbirth, increase sex drive. It's used for male menopause. So when we have these sexual, it infers this sexuality through this drink. And the use of alcohol in itself is giving them the ability to not look at the reality of the situation. And now, as sophisticated readers, we look at this and we're like, if Jig continues to abuse alcohol, she's also risking the health of her child. Now, this is information that we have that perhaps a reader would not have had in 1929. The railroad station in literature is always symbolic of change. It's symbolic of new direction. And that's exactly where they are. They're at a railroad station between two major cities. Do I go right? Do I go left? We do not know. We're going to argue about it. We need to make a decision. What are we going to do? Do we go back to our old life? Well, there is no going back to their old life. They have to make a decision and do something. Do we go ahead and make that decision? Or do we not make a decision and start a new life because we didn't? So here is a couple in crisis at a crossroads. Theme. What does the title mean? You need to interpret this symbolically. The hills are like white elephants. I see beauty in the hills. Or do I see something very expensive that I do not want in the hills? I don't believe that's what Jig's saying, but that could be two different point of views. That's what Jig sees. She sees the beauty in nature. She sees the beauty in her future. She sees the beauty in her future motherhood. And the American. He sees the literal white elephant. He sees the expense of the child. He sees the way this child is going to change his life. Perhaps he's not ready for that to happen. What universal statement about each conflict? We have to separate each conflict. How is society responsible for this? Okay, the man and the woman, what is their responsibility to each other? What is their responsibility to society? What is society's responsibility to Jig as an individual? What is society's responsibility to the American as an individual? Do men have rights in this situation? They should, and we know that now. This makes it even more valuable for us today. What about nature? What about God? Some people who see this, they see this as a no-brainer. This is a responsibility that both people should take because of their responsibilities toward their religion. What is a responsibility that each individual has to himself or herself, and where I don't even see it, so I guess we could put this in, give us a third, what about the child? So that would be the man and the woman versus the unborn child. I love this image. Someone has taken the hills and they put the baby elephant there. And it's just amazing because you can see how Jig looks out and she sees the baby elephant or the series of elephants together. But here this image of pregnancy is very, very vivid. The only correction I would make to this piece of art, what I think it needs is another railroad track, because we only have one railroad track. It's only going one direction. Okay, and I guess the trains could be going either directions. But a railroad at a crossroads, intersecting railroad tracks or railroad tracks together would make it more vivid. But the purpose of art, just like the purpose of the story, is to get us to think and to talk about these things. And this artist has done a beautiful job with this artistic interpretation of the story. Again, another probably non-professional rendition. We have Jig, and you see that she's a dancer. And she asks him, I know, but if I do it, and what is it? It is have the operation, have the abortion, then will you be nice to me again? And if I say things are like white elephants, will you like it? Will you stop being angry with me if I give up your child? Will you love me again if I give up your child? And she's smart enough to confront him. So that's what I think. I think the Jig is discovering her own voice here. And I think what she's been doing in their relationship, and I don't know this is what we infer from our personal experiences, that she's been going along, getting on the railroads, taking the trains, going to the parties, but now she's standing up for herself because she knows, if I make this decision and I do this for you, is that going to make you love me again? Now we're looking for theme. We don't really know what's going to happen. We're trying to get Hemingway to tell us what he wants us to think, and he's not going to do it. He gives us, he just makes us ask more questions. What does the American do? Well, he finishes his drink, and then he makes a statement. Well, I better take the bags over to the other side of the station. This statement has always confused me. I don't know if he's taking the bags over to the other side to get back on the other train, or if the other side of the station was where they were going in the first place. But he's going to take them to the other side. I want him to go back to Barcelona. I want him to have their baby and live happily ever after. But Hemingway was a realist, and he's not going to allow me that luxury. So look at this image that we have here of the flapper from the 1920s. Jig would be like this. She would look like this. She would be thin. She would be beautiful. And she would have not this many suitcases, but maybe that one on the bottom, that's underneath her legs, with all of those stickers of all the places she's been. And do they want to give up their bags? And do they want to continue on their journey of life, which is not a bad thing by any means? Or do they want to stop and take the time to start a family? And if they do that, will they be able to continue with this adventure that they're having? But has this adventure been that great? All this partying and alcohol? Don't know. We bring in our own histories when we interpret what we think this couple has been through. Again, we're looking at final paragraphs. And he asks Jig, he says to her, well, how are you doing? And she says, I feel fine. There's nothing wrong with me. A young woman at the moment of her pregnancy, when she's about to give birth, is at her most perfect biologically. There is nothing wrong with me. The inference that she needed to have some kind of surgery, that she needed to have a procedure. No, she doesn't. She is perfection. She is in the state where nature wants her to be. So in this sense, she would be at her most perfect state. Those of us who are romantic want to believe that Jig believes that she is at a moment of perfection. This is her epiphany. Now, whether or not she has the realization that she is perfect and she wants to be a mother is one thing, or there's nothing wrong with me, I'm strong, I'm independent, I can take care of myself, even if you're not going to. So maybe she has the abortion, and maybe she chooses to go with the photograph on the right, where there's nothing wrong with the life that I'm choosing to have. Hemingway doesn't tell us. He doesn't make that distinction between right or wrong. But what he has done is given Jig a sense of independence. There's nothing wrong with me. I will not allow you to convince me that there's something wrong with me. I will make my own decision. So what is the most important thing Hemingway wants you to consider? Is the theme here abortion? Is abortion right or wrong? No, I don't think Hemingway is going to give us that kind of a morality value. That's not his purpose. His purpose is to say, when a man and woman get together, this is what happens, and this is the conflict that they must face. Now, who do they represent? All of us. Anybody, any couple, any two beings who have considered to be a gay couple, any two beings who have ever considered starting a family or considered not starting a family. Because again, you've got that conflict with society. Are other people going to think less of me if I do not have children? If I make that decision to go another way, to be the picture on the right and to travel and to be an independent woman? Are people going to criticize me for that? So what is it that Hemingway wants us to think? Heaven knows. Heaven only knows. But it's about a couple. It's about human relationships. It's about what happens when two people intersect, when their lives intersect. And what about that intersection? Well, if you're going to be in love, and if you're going to have a mature relationship, what must you be? What strength must you have inside yourself? So what does mature relationship require? What? Self-awareness, maturity. A mature relationship requires a maturity within oneself. They cannot continue the immature lifestyle that they've had. But in order to either maintain their relationship or to separate, both of these people are going to have to find some kind of self-awareness, maturities within themselves. And then they're free to go either the same direction or their separate ways. So, is this the end or the beginning? What do you think? Okay, what is the theme? If it's a theme of love, what about love? Can we live on love? Love's not enough. Okay, I think the theme here deals basically with responsibility. Responsibility for your own actions, for your own self.